Welcome to the SJ Child Show. This episode is sponsored by Water and Body Basics. Visit 3440 South, 5600 West, West Valley City, Utah. Mention SJ Childs today.
Hi, welcome to the SJ Childs Show. I'm your host, SJ Childs, and today I have a special guest, Anthony Miano. Thank you so much for being here today, Anthony.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, such a pleasure to have you. You have a podcast that you are a co-host.
Yes.
And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're going to talk a little bit about your life, and you are a veteran. And just so happens we're going to be airing this. I had told you it wasn't going to be for a few months, but guess what? Veterans Day is next week. So guess who gets their special guest preview next week? You. So yeah, so I'm really excited and really just I'm honored to be able to do this for you. So thank you so much for being here.
My partner and I appreciate the promotion. We're a small program called No Outlet Live, broadcasting out of Cleveland, Ohio. We're a small program with potential for aggressive expansion. And I didn't do the Joker voice there.
It was great. No, that's great. And, we were talking about kind of what you talk about on your podcast. And I love the sense of what you talk about. So tell us a little bit about that and your topics that you cover.
Well, we cover topics ranging from the obvious, like the recent shooting on the set of Alec Baldwin's movie Rust, to the West Point cheating scandal from last year, to rollerblading Pakistani police, to a possible lesbian remake of Die Hard. And then, of course, my friend and I we contribute our own individual perspectives. Like, for instance, with the Rust shooting, I talk about my experience in the military with ranges, how people are supposed to prevent this sort of thing. We're on that was covered in our most recent episode. We're on all the streaming platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and some of the stuff I'm as surprised at as our listeners, because I contribute stories that he doesn't read beforehand. He finds stories that I don't look at beforehand, so you get a very fresh reaction to all of it.
That.
And in each episode, I find myself talking about something neither of us expected, like stories about NBA superstar LeBron James that, to the best of my knowledge, haven't been reported in any media outlet.
Wow.
And how do I know these stories? From observing him personally.
Yeah, right. No, I think
Yes.
that's really cool. I like my show the same way. I'm not a read off a script, ask a bunch of questions kind of gal. I find myself in the moment, free flow, authentic conversations work best for me. So yeah, I love that.
And as for how I observed him personally, we were in the same high school graduating class.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Oh, yeah. So I wasn't in his inner circle of friends. I mean, he had that small group around him that had known him since he was very young, but I was still close enough to see him away from the cameras.
Yeah, definitely. And you definitely see a different side of people.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest change, if I had to pick a moment when the change began, it was when he was on the first Sports Illustrated cover.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I also got to see things like, he sat out football senior year after being an all-state wide receiver twice because there were going to be too many players on other teams that had it out for him and might try to
hurt him,
shall we say, cripple him and end his basketball career.
Yeah, right. That's no good.
On the more positive side, I saw him in a playoff game junior year where he was on a kick return team and someone yelled, "LeBron, get a block." I don't know if it was a coach or someone in the audience, but he just threw his arm out and swatted the player next to him like a fly, and it worked.
Well, what works, right?
Yeah, but I've been rambling. I'm sure you have another question.
You're
to stop me from nervously talking.
Yeah, you're totally fine. No, I love it. So you started the podcast, it sounds like a little bit of last year, and then kind of took a little break and then took back hold of it over these last few months. So there's been lots of topics to discuss, I'm sure. What is it also on YouTube, right? It's a video as well as on audio.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have a YouTube channel. Our primary method for the time being is we live stream on Facebook.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And
I still need to get to that point.
Oh, yeah. It's an evolving.
Yeah.
It's evolving. I'll be honest. My partner does have a plan. We have a plan. It still feels like there's a considerable amount of flying by the seat of our pants.
Isn't that the truth? I think that's somehow some of the best decision making is when you can just go in the moment and do things like that. So, I mean, yeah, it can be disastrous too, but right, we have to take risks. Let's talk about your life and kind of your experience as a veteran and how that started for you.
Well, it started with 3 parents, 3 grandfathers, 3 uncles, and at least 2 ancestors that I'm aware of that were all in various military branches. Some of the mementos are behind me. I don't know if your viewers can tell, but that's my late uncle's green beret in the middle, my late grandfather's ceremonial sword. He was one of the last Iwo Jima Marines.
Wow.
I myself was qualified as a cavalry scout and a psychological operations specialist. I was also qualified as an instructor, and I was on the military funeral honors team for a while. Mm-hmm. That was the most rewarding job I've ever had.
Really? Tell us about that. Why would you say that is really interesting?
Well, I believe that the families of the veterans deserve someone on that wanted to be there. And
yes.
By that, I mean, the way it worked was all of us in reserve units would volunteer for it. Our units put us in touch with the coordinator, and we would tell this guy where we lived, what dates and times we were available. So when he got a funeral service, he would plug in an address and say, okay, I have these 2 guys available for that one. They would text us a time, place, and name of the deceased. We would get there. We would talk with the funeral director, the civilian, and the minister, and arrange when we were going to go on. We would coordinate with the VFW or whichever local veterans group was there. You might be familiar with the 21-gun salute tradition. Yeah, most of the time that's not done by actively serving military members anymore because of just the lack of manpower. So it's usually the local veterans groups that take care of that.
Yeah.
At a minimum, though, one of us in uniform would play taps. We even had a couple of people that knew how to play the bugle for real instead of the speaker. The speaker isn't ideal, but it's either that or someone makes bugle noises with their mouth. And I don't think any of us wants that.
No.
And then we would fold the flag and present it to the next of kin.
Yeah.
That was an adventure in and of itself. Sometimes I had this one funeral director pulled up, saw me and my partner, and said, this guy was a veteran. Do you guys happen to have a flag? And I just went real wide-eyed, like, what did you say? And I said, as it happens, we do, in the most barely restrained, hostile tone. Okay, my words were very cooperative and accommodating, but my tone said, you are so lucky we are prepared.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
So, and the reason we were prepared is we carry a practice flag around with us to rehearse beforehand and use for real should the need arise. That was an interesting one. And then I had others where the next of kin invited us both to the wake afterwards. I also did the folded flag for my late father and grandfather's services.
That's an honor.
And when my mom and grandmother pass on, I'm going to be inheriting those.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So. And that's so special to you. I mean, it's wonderful that they would go to someone who would appreciate the value.
And I'll be receiving my mom's eventually.
Yeah.
That is probably going to hit me harder than any of the others.
Sure. I can imagine.
Everyone assumes that it must be the most emotionally draining thing there is. And to be honest, well, maybe because I grew up with the military, I guess I might have been, I don't know,
desensitized a little. Yeah, I can understand that.
Most of the
trained
veterans I buried were Vietnam, Korea, or even World War II vets. And it's hard to see, and it's natural when older men die.
Sure.
It only got hard when they were my age.
Yes,
I had a 35-year-old suicide. I had another one where I saw the next of kin, the mother. I assumed she was burying her husband, and then I saw a picture, and it was her son. And those are the ones that hit hard.
Sure.
But at least then I've given the family someone that wants to be there. Voluntarily.
So let me ask you this, and this is kind of an interesting kind of topic to touch on. When, as far as the suicide goes, does the military still honor that? I mean, are they still honored and, respected? Because everyone has their own struggles, and that's good for anyone to judge. So, my opinion.
There is no policy, formal or informal, I'm aware of, that prohibits a service member who commits suicide from receiving military funeral honors.
That's good.
The biggest factor is actually going to be the family.
Yeah.
If a veteran that killed himself did not receive military funeral honors, it would be because the family specifically didn't want it, or maybe they might be mistaken and then proceed as though they weren't entitled. I don't know if you ever watched This Is Us, the NBC program.
Yeah.
It's been called grief porn. And the one tearjerker opportunity I ever noticed they missed was when Jack Pearson died. Spoiler alert. They didn't do military funeral honors for him, which he would have been entitled to because he was a Vietnam veteran. And it hit me. I think it might be a misconception that people think military funerals are reserved for the ones killed in action.
Yeah, that's really interesting for you to bring that up.
And so I just want to clarify that no, that policy does not exist. I mean,
any service member can and should receive that.
Yeah, one of my hardest funerals was for a 24-year-old specialist from my reserve unit who was killed in a car accident. And to be honest, when our commander first broke the news to us, I had to think about it for a minute who this guy was. But it had the biggest turnout of any funeral I've been to because roughly half the company showed up. A company is approximately 100 soldiers, give or take, depending on the kind of unit. Our chaplain showed up. The group commander, which is a full bird colonel, was there. A coordinator from Michigan came in and showed us how to do a 6-man flag fold. And it was the only 21-gun salute I've ever seen with active serving soldiers in uniform.
Wow.
yeah.
And for
so-
this young gentleman, that's very honorable.
And the hardest part was when our commander did the presentation of the folded flag. It was the youngest next of kin I've ever seen. It was his 6-year-old daughter.
No.
And he did not use the standard script, and that was the closest I ever came to crying at one of those services. But
wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, so
it's just what an honor. Thank you from me
and
and
for anyone that has a veteran in their family that might want military funeral honors, I would advise you to have their DD 214 ready if you don't already have it, and then remember to give that to the funeral director when you make the arrangements, because he's the one who is going to contact the military and arrange for that detail to be done. So
that's such great advice. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
It's just a way to help. I mean, they tell people be ready to, leave instructions for your family members behind, like paying bills, bank account passwords. So yeah, that's one thing for that hard time you can prepare for a little bit more while you can.
Oh my gosh. And really, when do you have the chance to come on to talk about this topic, to have someone on as, experienced as yourself and knowledgeable of these? It's wonderful. I learned so much just in this last 15 minutes. I appreciate you so much sharing that with me, because like I had shared with you, I mean, my father is a retired Major General. And so obviously everyone that knows him and our family know that he will, have a military funeral.
He's the very model of a modern Major General.
Yeah, right?
Sorry, as soon as you specified Major General, I had to work that joke in.
Yeah, so true. Oh, man. But he was an F-4 pilot. And so I had really unique experiences to be able to spend a lot of my time down at the Air Guard and spend a lot of my time on the runway as a kid, which is unheard of now. That's something no child could experience, at the rate I did, because it was the 80s and there wasn't so much security, and it was amazing.
Oh yeah, the post 9/11 world has been. Yeah, I also grew up with a parent in another state. I was raised by my mom and my stepdad. I flew to see my father twice a year. And I was born in 85. So I'm one of the youngest people left that can remember pre 9/11 anything.
Yeah, right?
As I learned from my emergency management program, where I have a bachelor's degree in that, which is, I guess, almost a footnote in my life at this point. Americans are very reactive, not proactive. So I can only hope. Well, we can only hope that as we get further away from 9/11, that maybe we can go back to some of the routines, like not having to take our shoes off. But to be honest, I think we'd all just settle for not having to wear masks at the airport.
Oh my gosh, heavens. Yes, exactly. I think we would. It's a really, and it's kind of telling that in our life right now, for families that haven't ever had trauma or anything, I'm sure you have now. I'm sure the last year has been, if you've never experienced trauma before in your life, trauma in a different form than you'd ever experienced. And everybody had to figure out a new way of doing everything, huh?
Corona disturbed American day-to-day life in a way. The closest example I can think of it within even fairly recent memory is World War II.
Yeah.
And even during World War II, yes, there was rationing, and Major League Baseball canceled its All-Star game a couple times.
Yeah.
But movie studios still made new movies as much as they could, considering even major stars were off fighting the war.
Yeah.
But Yeah, it surprised me last year when I have no interest in basketball, for instance, but it was still scary to me when the NBA hit the pause button. I'm like, this is powerful enough to stop
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
in their
Right.
tracks. And then,
Yeah.
the most recent disturbance that was anything like this was 9/11. But even then, most business was back up and running at least within the next week.
Right.
Drastically changed in a lot of areas, but still it wasn't like yeah, folks, we're gonna need to close every single restaurant now just so we can ensure every drive-through is safe from Al-Qaeda interference. I'm sorry. Terrorism is just too much of a threat to our schools, so you're all going to have to do school over the computer now.
Oh my gosh, right?
No.
We're so lucky. I mean, I guess that's good that never happened. Thank goodness. That would have been a scary life.
And back then, if Corona had happened back then, I don't know what would have been done because we didn't have this Zoom capability.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone, I mean, the internet was available to most Americans, of course, but I don't even know when teleconferencing was first invented.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I remember being like a part of an MLM, or something where it was like the Viacom and it was your first video conferencing calls. And I was totally ready to get on board with these guys. And then I didn't, and nothing, obviously they never took hold because everything else started happening with video access. So it's interesting. Well, before we wrap up for today, I want to make sure that we get all of your information. If you have a website for the podcast, obviously the podcast name and where we can find you, all that good stuff.
Okay, well, you can find us on type into Google No Outlet Live, all one word, and we also live stream on Facebook. Send us a friend request, subscribe to us on YouTube. I can send you an email with direct links to all of them.
Perfect.
and then you can throw those on the screen.
I'll do it. That's exactly what I do. We'll do the video editing and I'll put everything up there. So it'll be running down the screen when you're saying it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I've gotten decent at Adobe Premiere myself. Is that what you use?
I use a program called AVS Video Editor. I have a son with autism who is 11, who has a photographic and an auditory memory, who's been coding and video editing since he was like 6. So we had to buy this expensive editing software for him and his many projects. And so luckily when I started my podcast, I was like, hey, I have this great video editing software already. I can do this on my own. So
keep him on it. At this rate, you won't have to bother sending him to college.
100%. Anthony, you wouldn't believe it. Yeah.
He'll already be working.
Yeah.
Well, he'll already know how to do the job. He'll have a portfolio ready to go when he graduates high school.
He's like 109 languages into language and linguistics. He
speaks
literally 109 languages. All learned over Google Translate to be, that's where he studies most of his time is Google Translate. If he's not doing video animation and things. And it's hilarious because I'm a children's book author and I have children's books and I have been bugging him. Can you please help me animate these books? But he doesn't want any part of it. And I don't know how to do it.
Oh, speaking of books, I also wrote one.
Oh, good.
I intend to self-publish on Amazon.
Wonderful.
If I have that up and running, if I have that available, but when is this airing?
Next week. But we can do it whenever. You just let me know and I'll put something up for you after that.
Okay, yeah.
100%.
I will definitely. Yeah, it is called The Changing of the Gods. It is.
Oh.
Are you familiar with the Trojan War?
Yeah, I mean,
Trojan horse.
from high school, unfortunately, but
So basically, Hades, the god of the underworld, gets fed up with pretty much everyone, and then he decides, among other things, the premeditated murder of children is not something anyone should be allowed to walk away from.
yes.
But most of the offenders are gods, so punishing them is going to be a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I have visions of giving speaking engagements and having it be adapted into a major film.
I love it. Well, those are the kinds of thoughts you should be having.
Yes, I'll be, yeah, so if not in time for this broadcast, I will definitely be including a link to where you can buy my book.
Perfect.
And hopefully my partner likes my interview.
Again, yeah, right? Hopefully he
No
does.
Outlet Live.
Thank you so much, Anthony, for being here today. I'll make sure to have all those links down in the description. And you make sure to come and visit me on SJ Child Show, all the social medias, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and we will catch up with you later. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to promote No Outlet Live.
So my pleasure. We'll talk to you soon, Anthony.
Good night.